So I just wanted to briefly introduce Corrina. So Corrina is a registered social worker with the BC College of Social Work. She has both her master's and bachelor's degree in social work from McGill University. Corrina has worked with individuals experiencing a range of mental health struggles, movement disorders, and life transitions, such as coping with new chronic illness diagnosis, mindfulness and strength-based approach, and through collaboration aims to create a space of self-compassion for all of her clients when providing short-term counseling or healthcare navigation. And I would like to now welcome our couple panelists and Corrina. Over to you.
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be facilitating this webinar alongside our two wonderful couples. So we'll get to their introductions in just a moment, but we have Ahava and Gregory joining us, and Michelle and Andy. And our goal today is really to learn from each other and to open the conversation to really understand and explore how couples navigate diagnosis like Parkinson's together. We really recognize that it's not just the individual that's diagnosed that is impacted, but it's the family and it's the couple. And so really excited to extend this conversation today. And just for your information, this is the second of a three-part caregiver webinar series that PSBC is facilitating. And the final part is going to be scheduled for November 26th, and it'll be addressing caregiver needs in that session. So again, as Kelly mentioned, if you do have any questions during our discussion, feel free to use the chat box and Kelly will bring them up as they come. But let's get started. So maybe let's introduce our couple. So maybe Ahava and Gregory, let's start off with you. Would love to maybe hear us where you're located and maybe tell us just a little bit about yourself and your partnership.
You want me to go first? Yeah. Okay. So Greg, you can call him Greg. I call him Gregory. So oftentimes when people meet him, if they call him Gregory, he knows they're kind of like my friend because I call him Gregory. But anyways, so yes, this is Gregory and I'm Ahava. We live on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. And we have been together for 23 years. And we have been navigating Parkinson's together for, it's almost 5 years, I guess. It's kind of heading into our 5th year. What else can I say? What else?
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey. It's a journey. And you know, Gregory and I both really love to learn, and I think that's one of the things that supports us a lot is seeing it as a learning journey. So I think anything else you want to add there?
Well, I keep wondering what the gift is in it, because there's got to be a gift somewhere in this experience. Why am I having this experience, and what's the gift to be taken from it? And so slowing down has been one of the things that comes to mind. And having to can't leave things anymore, right? It's in the sense of if there's a bit of a disruption in our relationship, we got to talk it through, because you never know how things are going to turn out otherwise, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think it has made us more, and we were all down that path, but more conscious as a couple and more compassionate. Probably too.
And I'm more in touch with my feelings, I guess you could say, because they percolate to the surface way more than they used to.
Okay.
I can't deny them now. So, because if I'm getting agitated, my body responds to that. If I'm tense, it responds to that sort of thing. So I can't pretend I'm being stoic anymore because my body doesn't let me.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So together for, was it 23 years you guys said? 23 years and about 5 years into navigating your journey with Parkinson's disease. And there's been I'm hearing a lot of learning along the way, a lot of learning with yourself, with each other as a couple. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that introduction from the two of you. Let's bring it over to Michelle and Andy. Thanks for also joining us. Curious to hear where you guys are located and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your partnership.
Sure. Well, we're really grateful to be here. I'm Michelle, and this is Andy. And Andy isn't able to speak, so I'll be the voice for both of us. But we did go over all the questions that you sent, so I've gotten information from Andy that he wants to share if it comes up and as it comes up. We're located in Taos, New Mexico, United States. And yes, we've been married, we've been together 50 years, so we've been together a long time. And also, Andy's had Parkinson's, he's in his 21st year. So he was able to speak for most of it, but that's a story we'll get into. And we really approached this whole experience with Parkinson's as we wanted to live as best as possible. And so that entailed really being open to unusual strategies and possibilities in our life that aren't the regular sort of conventional ways of dealing with having Parkinson's disease. And so we'll get into that as we go.
I'm really excited. I love hearing this like flexibility and this openness to being curious and exploring different ways that we can live with Parkinson's and live well. And I think this is a really great opportunity for us to be able to have these conversations of how couples can live well together, what that can look like. So thank you so much for your introduction. Maybe we'll get started. I'm curious to, and what's really interesting, I think that with our conversation today is we have two couples at really different stages or different parts of their journey. So I would love to hear, maybe Ahava and Greg, maybe we'll get you guys to start if that feels comfortable, but just tell us a little bit about your journey with Parkinson's. How, I guess, curious, and then this can be obviously a big question, but yeah, where things are at, how your journey has been up until this point.
You want to start?
Sure. Well, when I was diagnosed by the neurologist, it was during COVID, so it was just a Zoom call. And my first response was, well, I accept your diagnosis, but why should I trust you? And how do we know it's true? So I immediately went on the defensive and said, okay, you've diagnosed me with Parkinson's, but you can't tell me what causes it. You can't tell me you can't do anything to cure it. So what use are you to me? So I don't think he was really impressed with that response. And people that I've talked to since have said, how did you have the balls to do that to the neurologist? And it was just, I believe that, well, I need to know stuff. And so I initially said no to the medication because I wanted to see what I could do for myself with exercise and and diet and different modalities. And so it took me a couple of years, and they did pretty well, but there was a slow decline. And so I eventually accepted the medication, and I've been on 4 different medications now, and none of them have worked. They've not had the increased quality of life that they were touted to be. So he's currently taken me off all medication. So I'm not on anything besides vitamin supplements and things that I do. So I'm kind of waiting for a CAT scan to be followed by a DAT. I think it's a DAT scan after that. So I'm at a bit of a loss as to what's going on in my body, because he said that the levodopa would demonstrate that I have Parkinson's because it would improve the symptoms, but it didn't. So it's sort of like, So I'm very interested in Michelle and Andy's journey as to alternative things, because I'm very much on that space myself.
Yeah, and I think, just to kind of validate the experience of a diagnosis in COVID, when there's also then that remote and isolation from being able to, connect face to face with your neurologist or with your healthcare team. And then the stress around finding solutions, medications that work with your body, which help alleviate stress. And so I'm hearing there's a lot of, there's been a lot that's happened over these last 5 years and kind of navigating through to get to where you guys are at now. So thank you. And Michelle and Andy, let's hear from you guys. How about your journey? A number of years later, curious to kind of hear, from you.
Definitely. Well, I'll just start with when Andy was diagnosed, it started with just his little finger tremoring. He was drawing plans for his work, drawing architectural art plans. And we really didn't think anything of it. And kind of pretty quickly it progressed enough so that we were understanding that something was really wrong. And it's fascinating, Gregory, because no, Andy did not do well with the drugs. The drugs did not help him. The carbidopa, levodopa, he tried something called amantadine. This is all a really long time ago, but they did not help his symptoms, and his symptoms were mainly tremor. He had tremor, shaking, and what? Well, yeah, it started out, Andy said his tremor was really a shake. It started as a tremor and then it got very, very much more pronounced over a couple years. And so what I recommend for anybody being diagnosed is don't be in a rush. Like you said earlier, Greg, slow everything down. Slow everything down with a diagnosis, because there's a lot of things that might come your way that you're not aware of right away. And the medical doctors that we saw at that time were kind of in a rush. They were like, get on this medicine right away. Let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
And for us, that was not the best choice. So Andy actually was off all medicine, and we tried a zillion alternative things, which I can go into some of them. Some worked really well, and some really, I think I say in my book, we were made fools of, like you are, because you try something, you get excited, and then it doesn't work. So it's like, well, that's the nature, trial and error. But what finally really did work for Andy was the deep brain stimulation surgery. And he had Parkinson's, his deep brain stimulation surgery was in 2013. And he had it already since 2004. So it was like 9 years. And 7 of those years were very disabling. I mean, extremely disabling. And he couldn't feed himself, get up out of a chair, roll over in bed, nothing. And those were pretty hard years. However, the deep brain stimulation surgery he was a candidate for, and it absolutely stopped all of his tremors, and he hasn't taken any medication. He's not on any medication at all. And so show yourself, show your hands, or like, he's just fine. He doesn't tremor. He can get up, stand up. We're going to demonstrate you since you can't speak. You can stand up out of a chair. We're in a pretty soft couch. There you go. He can walk really well. His neurologist is always watching him walk. He didn't sit back down. And so our life really has improved dramatically from that surgery. And we continue to do a lot of alternative treatments. And I will share the ones that seem to work better than others. But what I always say is the surgery really, really eliminated Andy's symptoms for himself. And the alternative treatments really kept Andy, the human being, the man inside here, intact, so that when his symptoms stopped, he was able to drive and work out at the gym and travel with me to India and do a zillion adventures. And we're still doing that. So I think that's what I'll say.
No, thanks. It really just highlights, I think, how unique the experience with Parkinson's can be in terms of the onset of motor and non-motor symptoms, treatment options that work for one and for other. And you both have kind of touched on some of these challenges that you see that you've both been experiencing as a couple. And so we see oftentimes, like with Parkinson's, can bring up a lot of anxieties about the future or worries. And I'm sort of curious, maybe Michelle and Andy, will start with you. Curious how as a couple you guys navigate through hard moments that come up with Parkinson's.
Yeah, I asked Andy that, we talked about that earlier, so I'm gonna share what his initial response was, and then I'll tell you mine, and we'll stop our dog from barking in a minute if he doesn't do it automatically. But what Andy said is he doesn't think about the future. He lives in the present. And the way that he would do that is from a lifetime of spiritual meditation practice and discipline of, if it's not happening now, why worry about it?
Mm.
I'm gonna turn Shine off, all right? We can close the door. I'm sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear our dogs barking at
Just
some.
a little bit, but not to worry. She's just
Okay.
saying hello.
So Andy's answer was he goes inward and says, this moment is really all we have in the spiritual sense. And so this moment is what I'm going to enjoy and what I'm going to live with.
Mhm.
I'm not quite there. I'm more like, well, I get worried because, and I'll say when Andy first got Parkinson's, people really like to share their horrible stories. So unfortunately for all of us who are dealing with, living with this disease, we hear things and that can cause anxiety.
Mhm.
And so what I do is really try to pay attention to what is going on right now and then try to maximize what we can do and prove people wrong. Be able to say, and so we've done that so many times now that it's kind of part of our mode of operating. We just prove people wrong all the time. And, Andy's been told by doctors when he initially was diagnosed, well, you had one doctor say, well, it's just going to get worse and worse, so you may as well just forget about your life. And okay, we had another neurologist tell him, get really angry because he wasn't on the medication. And we were like, well, it didn't work and it made him want to sleep all the time. So that's not what we want to do. And he didn't have any understanding for us. So mine is just like, no, I'm not going to believe what people say, but I'm more like the trial person. I'll think of things and we'll do them. And as they become successful, when Andy was a school teacher for a while for special ed kids in 12th grade. And he used to say, success makes more success. So that's my strategy is let's try to do something that's successful with Parkinson's that brings us joy. And then that will encourage us to be able to do it the next thing.
It like adds that feedback loop in a way of like validating, we've got this, we're doing this, we're maybe doing it differently. And I think I hear this a lot in the work that I do where, there's this apprehension of like, every time someone says that they have Parkinson's, there's a lot of like worst case scenarios, lots of information online, and that can be really, really difficult to navigate. And I think this like mindset of, being grounded in the present as much as we can really sometimes help quiet those anxieties and worries that are really valid as well. They come from a really valid place, but they're not always helpful. So I really sense this difficulty of balance of like being present and mindful of where we're at right now, and also kind of being aware of those anxieties that come up.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Ahava and Gregory, curious as well for you. Again, same question around the navigating through the anxieties and fears that come up, and how do you guys navigate through them together?
Well, there's a lot of similarity, a lot of things that we share. So for me, being in the present moment is really important, and quality of experience, quality of life, quality of experience, and quality of relationship. And that's been something that Gregory and I have been dedicated to from the get-go of our relationship. So for me and for us, it's whenever we're dealing with challenge or difficulty, how do we bring kindness, compassion, and care to the experience? And that has been, I think, incredibly helpful and supportive for us. I think that it's also, we have certain ways that we have been in relationship and we've seen each other in relationship. And what this has done is challenged us not to hold on to those ways, or not to like think, oh, that's the whole thing, right? So it really has challenged us to step into different parts of us. Gregory had said that he wasn't really an emotional person, but Parkinson's and this whole experience has opened him up. He spent a lot of time as a planner trying to like avert and make sure he was highly prepared for any kind of emergency. And so there's a sense of like opening up into not knowing and being more comfortable with that. For me, I have, I'm very, I'm just dedicated to loving. So that's been a big part of it for me. Okay, so I've never been a parent. So being a caregiver for me has been new. I've never had to parent anybody, and I'm not parenting Gregory, but I am caring for Gregory, and I am doing things I've never done before. And it was a big shock for me stepping into the role of caregiver. And so it has been a learning and a taking off this, that's not who I am, and opening into, I spent a lot of time on my creativity. I'm a writer, I'm a dancer. And then it's like, okay, well, I also can do this too. So I think we get stuck sometimes in, oh, that's not me, or I can't do this. And I think that has been really beautiful. Gregory was much of the nurture in our relationship. Like he was the main cook and took care of the house and everything. And role shifts have happened or continue to happen, although he's still very much caring for me as I care for him, because he's such a loving and communicative partner. And that has been, there's been resistance to that. And then in the opening to it and accepting it, there's also been beautiful, like I said before, learning and a sense of like, we're in this together. And we're doing this we can do this, we can do hard things. We're in this together. We really, we really like cheer each other on a lot and cheer ourselves on a lot, because we recognize how hard it is.
I think being each other's cheerleader and like cheerleading as a couple with this openness to engaging in all these different changes, whether that be like shifts in the roles and dynamic of what maybe was typically done in your partnership, and then engaging that with a lot of like kindness and compassion and love. It sounds like there's this awareness that this has been very difficult, but there's also this curiosity to engage with it together and then celebrate the things that are working, and even just the connection. I think that it sounds like there's this strength that's also come from this flexibility that you have of how you've been dealing with anxieties and fears that come up. It's really beautiful. Thank you.
To Michelle's point about the, I'll say the medical system telling you what I've said to one of my doctors. I said, you seem to take great delight in telling me and showing me what I can no longer do. When are you going to start showing me what I can do? Because let's focus on what I can do and forget about what I can't do any longer, because it's not doing me any good just repeatedly telling me what I'm not able to do. So it takes me half an hour to get myself dressed. So what? I can do it. So let's be cheering that on. And some days are better than others. And so pointing out that I haven't fallen down yet. Yes, I'm unbalanced, but so why do you keep testing my balance? Because we know it's off. So fuck off is what I want to say. Excuse me.
It's okay. I'm sure a lot of people would like to say that too.
Let's look at the positive things. Let's look at what's working. Let's look at what may work. Because they don't seem to be. It's like diagnose adios is the attitude of the doctors. It seems it's really disappointing. So I'm into all alternative practitioners as much. I happen to have been a house designer and builder for 30 years on Salt Spring, so it's interesting, the similarity.
Beautiful.
Anyway.
Yeah, thank you. I think this mindset that I'm hearing from both of you around is, how can we engage in the present moment as much as we can? How can we focus on the things that we can do, or have this more like teamwork attitude in terms of pursuing goals? I think that all really does help with not only how we're feeling about ourselves, but also within the partnership. Michelle and Andy, the next question over to you. are there any strategies that you use to help keep communication open and constructive during tough times?
Communication between ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's woven in with being married to somebody for a long time, because you have to create communication strategies when you're married for a long time. That's just the way it goes. And I would say that one of the biggest strategies we have now is that if we're feeling extremely emotional or charged about a particular thing, because in Parkinson's, there really is so much loss, at least there has been for us. And the loss is, I'll just give some examples. Like Andy and I were skiers our whole life. We raised our kids skiing on the mountain and doing homeschool and all these things. And I still ski, but Andy can't ski anymore. He could ski after he got his brain surgery. He skied in 2014 and 15, but there were some coordination issues, and he felt like having electrodes in his brain and wires coming down to stimulators was too dangerous. So now I don't ski with Andy anymore. And this was how we met. This was a huge part of our life. We were runners, exercise runners forever. Andy was a finisher in the Ironman triathlon in Hawaii in 1982. Like we've been exercise fanatics and really a big part of our life. Well, the losses, what I'm talking about is the communication, but what we found is that with the losses as they happen, it really helps to communicate about that and how we feel. And if we're feeling extremely sad or extremely emotional, we kind of have this agreement that we both can't fall apart at the same time. And so that's the strategy and sometimes we'll even be like, I'll be like, no, it's my turn.
Eating, like playing the container, each of you kind of taking a space of like holding the other emotionally.
Exactly.
I love that idea of bringing up the loss, because you're right, there's so many, whether that be small moments of loss or things that are changing, but when we're not able to acknowledge it, it doesn't mean the feeling disappears. It's still, I think, is still existing, and it exists between the two of you. And I think to be able to remove the blame from either person as being like the reason, but to kind of put it between and to say, this is the loss that we're experiencing, and this is both of our emotional response to it. It offers a space, I think, to connect with each other.
That's right. And it also makes space and room for new things to be created and emerge. And so we no longer ski, we no longer run, we no longer talk verbally. Like Andy can whisper, so we talk quietly when not on a Zoom, but there are a lot of things we do. We swim together. We travel together. We explore a lot of our children's lives where they're full-on adults. We have a full life, but they're not the things that we thought we would be doing at this time of our life. And Parkinson's is the great interrupter, but it doesn't end things.
Thank you. And that expands your idea of what communication is, I think, as well. There's different types of communication, even though it's not necessarily words that you're exchanging as easily or as accessibly, but just in the ways in which you are together. There is this other type of, I think, communication that has been able to evolve and strengthen that wouldn't, I think, happen otherwise. So it's interesting, I think, to see, to communicate about the loss, to expand on communication, and to have other ways that we can kind of focus our connection. I think those are all really beautiful, beautiful strategies. Thank you. Then Greg, curious, any communication strategies that you guys use or turn to when tough times are difficult and tough?
Well, I think we do a similar kind of thing of letting one be the holder of the space for the other. Ahava is better than I am, I think, at times.
This has been an ongoing story that Gregory's had, that he's not so good at relationships. But it's very humble because he's actually he's a great holder of space. And I think we do that. And yeah, just I've been doing a lot of writing about being a caregiver, and one of the things that I've realized and noticed as I'm writing is that there's this sense that there's one person who is now I'm caring for him, right? But the caring, the mutual caring continues. And as much as I am caring for him, Gregory still cares for me in so many ways. So, and I think that that is, and I was thinking about it as I was listening to you, Michelle. There's something about understanding and the importance of in our communication. And I think that's been really, I mean, I think it's been an ongoing thing, but I think it's deepened this need to understand what the other is going through. I mean, I can't be, I was doing yoga this morning, and yesterday I was dancing, and I go hiking a lot. And these are things that, Gregory and I used to dance together. Every now and then we'll do a little bit of dancing. But it's much more, much less. And so I think, wow, I live in this body that still moves so much, and Gregory's body is so still and stiff, and it's hard for him. And how do I understand that? It's like, how do I get that? Okay, this is what his experience is, and yet it's so different from mine. And I think that's true, isn't it? Like, when you're living with someone whose experience is so different, and yet how do we have understanding and compassion for the other? And I think that is those are probably the keys for our communication, is that, like really stepping back and pausing. And I know I do this a lot when I have a reaction or a trigger or something. And it's like, okay, remember what's happening here, understand what he's going through, have compassion. That's a big thing for me and for myself, recognizing, yeah.
And I think the sense of lack of independence on my part comes pretty huge. Like, Ahava would go visit her mom in Montreal, and I'd go on a solo kayak paddle trip in the Gulf Islands for a week or two, in kayaks that I'd built myself, kind of thing. So, and then we did a course called A Year to Love or A Year to Live many years ago. And I had my bucket item list was to go heli skiing when I turned 65. Well, I'm 66, and I don't think I'm going to go skiing unless I do something different. So, like she would go down and do a silent meditation retreat at Spirit Rock for a month, and I'd go skiing and backcountry skiing and avalanche training and stuff up in the interior of BC. And so we kind of had these not quite separate holidays, but we had quite different interests. I'd go rock climbing in the Joshua Tree, and she'd be off doing something else. So I remember being at a one of the motivational speakers I listened to is Brendan Burchard. And I had a friend that was struggling after a divorce, and so I dragged him off to a high performance academy weekend in Phoenix. And so I was there with 3,000 people just going bananas in a room, and Ahava was off on a week-long silent meditation retreat. We were doing these completely different things. I remember just, but it's almost like reverse. Things have shifted now. I like the more quiet stuff. And Ahava needs more stimulation almost. And so it's just interesting to see the differences and how do we come together and find things that we can do together now as a couple that are satisfying in ways that were comparable, I guess. And maybe that's the challenge, is always comparing to what was, and that gets me into trouble, as opposed to just saying, well, this is now.
Can I say one thing?
Of course.
I was just gonna interject with what Greg and Ahava were saying. Is the other thing is I'm noticing as we're talking, we're very similar, it seems like, which is kind of cool with it in different stages of the journey. But what I was gonna say is, because we're saying all these cool, great strategies and all these good things, it doesn't mean, like for me anyway, I'll just speak for myself and Andy. We also have we lose it sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's just such a disappointment. And sometimes it's just so hard to keep going. And so I wanted to just mention how important forgiveness is in this mix of strategies, and how I don't know what we would do without forgiveness. There's times that I will, yell at Andy like, I can't even believe this or whatever, as every couple does. Not, I'm not terrible, but like, and just the idea, we have strategies of asking each other for forgiveness and being able to make room for that. And before Andy had Parkinson's, so in the first 30 years of our marriage, we weren't as good at that. We would get angry at the same time, and we would be, now we're much better. Parkinson's has actually improved us as human beings in certain ways. And I just wanted to mention the idea of asking for forgiveness and forgiving ourselves for when we do lose it or lose patience or get frustrated, annoyed. And I have a saying I say to Andy, just because you have Parkinson's, you're not off the hook. Like you have to still let me know how you're feeling and be my partner.
I think that forgiveness piece is so interesting. I think too, sometimes there's also this high expectation we have of we're not having a particular reaction, or we're really hard on ourselves if things aren't going well. And I think just that self-compassion, the forgiveness with self and in partnership is a really beautiful blend, because I think it again also acknowledges that this is a very difficult experience, and that with difficult experiences, there's these difficult emotions, and we're human and we're going to feel it. But it's about how can we engage with the feeling. And it sounds like there's this space that you guys have been able to create and cultivate to be able to kind of contain each other emotionally when there are these really difficult moments that come up for anyone with or without Parkinson's. I think we can see that.
There's something else I'd add to the mix here, and I'm not sure if there's a question about this, but without community, I think our situation would be completely different. That the people in our lives who support us, the friends, the neighbors, this island, the carers that we've gathered around us, the support circles. I think that those are so important because, I know we have this idea that our partner is supposed to be everything for us, but that's impossible, right? And so I know that for Gregory, knowing, oh, he's going to go talk to this friend, or he's going to go talk to a counselor, or and then I can do that too. And then I have my team or my supports. That really, really contributes to a harmonious relationship and gives us space if we can't, if there's something and we are at a place of difficulty, or there's something that's really challenging, then we have another place to be able to talk about it. And so, and then we can come back, and actually discuss it and have that conversation.
Yeah, I think that the power of community and the capacity that community can bring, just in terms of everyone having different spaces also to exist, to have different spaces to have support. Michelle and Andy, I'm curious to hear from you. Is it community as well? What helps you guys also navigate with Parkinson's? Do you find that a supportive community has really been integral for you guys as you're navigating this as well?
Yeah, we have a couple of interesting things over all these, it's been different over different years. So it's not like it's always been a static community that we just draw from. Our kids lived close by. Both our kids gave up several years of their lives to be able to help when Andy was not able to really do much of anything. And I was working to support us. So there was all those things to navigate. But our community changes. And I was going to mention that one of the things that is important to Andy is having certain friends continue in our lives who knew him before he had Parkinson's. And the situation is that people who meet him now and have never known him as the man he embodied before Parkinson's came along, it's very different. It's different how they respond to him, how he feels open or connected. So we really value our family and our friends who have known him for a long, long time. And we also value the people who've just met him now. But for us, it's a really important balance. And I find Andy used to talk and take all the air out of the room. He would talk and to the point where people are like, okay, we don't want to know any more about that, because he's such an engineer mind, like every detail. And one of our dear friends just said to him, well, when his voice became a whisper, said, well, hey man, you used up all your words. Like, that's all right. And so friends who've known us a long time are very important to us, because they can joke around and not have it be the defining thing. Andy's never really defined himself by Parkinson's. It's a condition he lives with and that we live with, but it's not who he is. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if I answered about community, but that's my answer.
It's all good. I'm getting the sense that, there are these relationships that you have that, the people that have known Andy for years, there's this specialness and this connectedness around, also I think helps us see the person outside of Parkinson's. I think there's a lot of things that as Parkinson's can evolve in ways, there's a lot of our life is changing. There's the different laws, there's a number of things that are happening. And so to have these special relationships that date back years, I think also bring a sense of really like deep connection. And you're right, I'm sure it does change the interaction versus someone who's maybe just met you guys over the last few years. So I think community in whatever form, whether that be community through PD or through family, through friends, through spiritual activities, the balance and then the combination, I think, is all really important to also have individual spaces for each other. Libby, we'll go to Ahava and Gregory here. Curious to hear how you celebrate victories or milestones in your journey together when things are going well. And I know this kind of may be a sensitive question, because at the beginning, Gregory, you mentioned a lot around sort of the difficulty in being able to kind of, the challenges in terms of figuring out strategies and medications that work. But when you guys do find that there's things that are working, how do you celebrate it together?
We high five. We've got team swag.
Yeah.
Literally. And yes, we've taken our names, like, so Shira Watson, Ahava Greg, like so it's swag. So we go, yay, team swag, literally. We celebrate. And, the simplest things, really, whether it's Gregory, dressing himself or.
Yeah, I didn't pee on the floor in the bathroom,
Or just like, cleaning the house, like getting that done too, amongst everything else. Or,
I bought an Instapot recently, and I've got one recipe a chili recipe I'm still trying to refine the flavor. Ahava likes it, and I go, well, it could be a little bit, it's not quite there yet. And
So yeah, I think that's it. Is really Gregory has always been a master of appreciation. He is so good at saying thank you, and I appreciate you, and I see how much you're doing, and and that is so supportive. That's such a lovely way to keep the gratitude and that sense of like, I see you. And I think for me, one of the ways that I celebrate is, again, coming back to that, being that loving, supportive witness and caring, like the touch. I'm a big toucher, so that's one of the ways that I reciprocate the appreciation, is letting him know I am here, right? And honor and celebrating that.
yeah. And I think we should point out, we do have our meltdown periods.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we get over the stupidest things sometimes.
Oh yeah. Yes, actually, the other day I said we were at lunch, and I had wanted to have a day of writing. It was the weekend, and Gregory wanted to hold me to that writing, because he's always been incredibly supportive of my creative life and my writing. But I was afraid we didn't have enough food. So I said, well, maybe this afternoon I should cook us some soup or something. And he's like, Ahava, I want you to go and do your writing. And we're arguing. But and so I was feeling this sense of, wait, but I got to take care of us. And he's like, we'll be fine. Go take care of yourself. And it was a pretty intense, heated conversation about, just
Trying to be who's caring for who.
Who's caring for who, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
And that, I think that highlights again that reminder of, that probably gave you the reminder of the importance of my own self-care and whatever that looks like. And I think the acknowledgement of the small wins, celebrating the small things, I think is really important. It again, I think there's this moment of connection, whether that be something small or something on the larger scale, to be able to recognize that together and to be able to acknowledge it, I think is a really beautiful like opportunity and moment for connection. I think that's wonderful. Michelle and Andy, curious, what activities do you enjoy doing together, and have they evolved over time? And I know you gently kind of touched on this before in terms of how some of the capacities maybe have changed. So maybe I'm curious to maybe hear a little bit more about what you guys do enjoy doing together, and then Ahava and Gregory will come to you as well.
So yeah, what we enjoy doing together is always evolving, and with or without Parkinson's, that's going to be true. You know, everybody changes and things change and life goes on. So the things we enjoy doing right now a lot is pretty much at least 5 mornings a week. I lead Andy in breathing exercise. We do pranayama breathing, we do particular breathing exercises. And this is also a really nice way to communicate because it doesn't take words, and we are looking in each other's eyes, and it's quite a nice connection. We also, as I mentioned, we like to swim. So we try to create trips for swimming. I guess one of the things I just wanted to say about things we do together or about living with Parkinson's that we kind of go against the grain or the conventional way in this sense is safety is not our first concern. So our first concern is enjoyment, fun, connection, not safety. So we take risks. And, I'll put a big life vest. Andy will wear a big life vest, and he gets a snorkel that is a nose breather snorkel, so he doesn't have to turn his head to breathe. And we go in the ocean when we're in Hawaii, where we lived for a long time and where we still visit. And we go in there, and I will swim and walk next to him while he swims laps in the ocean. And we just flying there, getting on the plane and doing this trip, it's a big deal because things come up. Andy has these electrodes, so he can't go through security on an airport anymore with like just walk through the thing. He has to have a pat down every single time, and it's kind of a pain. And sometimes he can't, I can see he's getting wobbly standing that long while we're waiting for all these people to come and pat him and look through his clothes and all this. And, and I'll say, well, he does have Parkinson's, so if maybe you could get a chair so he could sit down. But I think we have fun kind of trying to do it and not make it like, well, we live in this beautiful home and we could be in here in this house a lot. It's wheelchair ready into one of the bathrooms. But so far, Andy hasn't needed a wheelchair. And so, we got a surprise last year. I broke my leg skiing and I had to be in the wheelchair. So we had a whole role reversal for a while. But what I'm trying to say is that safety is obviously an important thing for everybody. However, if you make it your primary goal, you'll lose a lot of spontaneity and fun. And so I just want to say that I think that it's really important to find activities you can do that you're not going to, put yourself in a terrible risk. But I also think that people who are living with an incurable disease like Parkinson's disease are put into kind of a corner of trying to be safe all the time. And I think that that's something to take with a little bit of a grain of salt.
Yeah, and I think you're leaning into, it's for the couple to be able to identify what feels important for us, what feels like a boundary, what feels like a limit to our safety, how can we work within that, what is a realistic risk for us that we're willing to be able to engage in. And I think there's probably this again, ongoing communication around how we can engage in life together while we're also acknowledging that, there's things that are different and we're having to evolve. The constantly evolving is very exhausting. It requires a lot of mental flexibility to be adapting to things that are changing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Then Gregory, curious, what are the things that you guys enjoy to do together and how have they evolved over time? But also what's interesting is you guys have had very different interests. So do you find that there's more shared interests now?
Well, the big thing that comes to mind for me is that my kitchen skills, I need a sous chef now. So Hava's helping way more in the kitchen, and I have to consciously ask for support with certain things. So a lot of my recipes have changed how I cook them now, and subtly. But so Hava's been very gracious at chopping vegetables for me, or onions, or peeling the garlic is probably the worst thing.
Or stirring the pot. Stir the pot, please. That's a hard one. So,
Yeah. So food has been delightful for us.
and that's a continuity thing, though. And actually, it's been really important for Gregory to keep cooking and keep building. That's a place of creativity for him. He can't build houses anymore. He's given away all his tools. He's sold his kayaks, like a lot of things he has let go of. But the kitchen and that creativity and making good food is something that he is still incredibly passionate about. And I'm happy. I'm so happy that that's the case. And I'm happy to be in the kitchen with him. I love it there too. So that's really great. And, we are together. He has his history of extreme activity, physical activity. As we said, we've danced together, but that has been a challenge for Gregory, more and more of a challenge for Gregory. We did like swing dancing. So we'll do like slow dancing a little bit now. But we both love to read, and this is something we actually did off and on in our relationship, but now reading to each other, especially actually I read to Gregory. And I love reading to Gregory, and we love taking in the story together and being in the narrative together. And so, yeah, reading books to each other, to Gregory is it's one of my favorite things that we do together.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I loved just hearing to hear how interests evolved, changed, to be able to still, I think, and I hear this like element of like still having this thing that feels like yours, that you can have like this creative outlet and sense to be able to feel like there's this connection with yourself, and also allows for you guys to connect with each other, which I think is really beautiful. We'll end with maybe one last question, and Ahab and Gregory, we'll start it off with you, but curious to any sort of final advice or ideas for couples that are navigating maybe a recent diagnosis together.
Question everything.
Question everything. Fair. That's fair. That's a really good piece of advice.
Don't believe anybody tells you, because it may not apply to you. Don't believe the doctors. Don't believe all the support staff. Do your own research.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
experiment.
Wow. I guess I'm thinking about Gregory when he was first diagnosed. At the same time as he says all that, he was very open about it with others.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and that was actually really, I know that a friend of mine, friends of ours who he was diagnosed, he kept it secret for a number of years.
Yeah.
But I think that by being open about it was very helpful. And really drew, like it was like, that was how we built community and support, by being open about it. And receiving that kind of the support. What else? Whew. I think courage and compassion, like, and that it's what do they say? It's a marathon, not a sprint. right? So I think Michelle, you said, take it slow. But yeah, I go back to that, like compassion, and be willing to, just to surprise yourself, really. There are really hard things, and there are so many beautiful things also. So remember that it's life, like all of life can be really challenging and also can be really beautiful. And sometimes it's really just depends on how you're looking at it in the moment. So be willing to see the beauty, the gifts, like Gregory said, and also give yourself the compassion and kindness and get the support with the really hard stuff.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Michelle and Andy, any sort of final thoughts or ideas for advice for couples that are also navigating a recent diagnosis?
Yeah, I would like to jump into what Ahava was saying about Gregory being very open when he was diagnosed, and that idea of being open about it and not allowing shame or embarrassment in. You might feel some of those things. Maybe they're important for you to feel, but they're not the whole picture. And I'm gonna just give a little moment, because we've had this over 20 years that we've been living with this. And our love has remained. Our love has just remained steady. But what I will say has changed for the positive is that the whole idea of navigating Parkinson's disease, being a caregiver, amongst many other roles that I have in my life, for Andy being a patient amongst many other roles that he's had in his life. In the last, I would say, year, we've really reached a place where we can see that there's a higher purpose in all this. Gregory, at the very beginning, you said you're looking for the gift. And I want to say that I'm not going to say we found the gift, but I am going to say that we are finding the gift. And it is, and it really is what I would call an acceptance of a higher purpose in life, that whoever does the choosing, we were chosen to live these roles, and we're going to live them the best darn way we can for as long as we can. We're going to ride this out. And that's what I would say.
Our soul's journey. Our soul's journey.
Soul's journey. Yeah. Thank you, both of you. So Ahava, Gregory, Michelle, and Andy, it's been such a wonderful hour to hear from you, to learn, to just explore such, I think, important issues that come up that couples navigate. Again, this is not something that we experience in isolation, and I think you're really demonstrating just so many different ways to continue to live life, to explore, to be with each other, to expand our ideas of communication and flexibility. And really, really deeply appreciate your time today and your openness and vulnerability to share. We have a quick question maybe from the audience, and then we'll wrap up. It was a question around physical, sorry, I'm having a hard time reading that, physical effects when dealing with a stressful event. I might just ask the writer to maybe just clarify that question before we finish. Kelly, is there any other questions that maybe came in just before we wrap up?
I don't see any other question. It's just that one there.
Okay, what physical effects do you have when dealing with the stress? I think that might vary, I think, from person to person with PD in terms of the physical signs and effects when there is stress. Is there anything that anyone would like to just add before we finish in terms of any physical effects of dealing with stress? Yeah, Michelle.
I would just say that definitely 100% anxiety, stress, worry exacerbates the symptoms of Parkinson's disease that are hard to live with. And so every Parkinson's patient, needs to develop mindful meditation, relaxation exercises, spiritual practice, whatever your lane is with that. know. But that's really important because the symptoms are so pronounced when there's agitation.
Yeah.
And we would echo that too. Mindfulness, spiritual practice, um, deep relaxation, meditation are very, very supportive.
Mhm.
And also, you know, like Gregory likes to watch something called Dry Bar, which is like a kind of a non-violent comedy thing, you know, so like de-stressing, different ways to de-stress, right? Sometimes it's like watching the hockey reruns or what, you know, but different ways to just to relax and de-stress, whether it's like those more formal or practices or just other things that you do just to let
Yeah.
go, right? Because it's a lot.
Can I say one more thing is because I
Yeah.
saw something pop up in chat saying anger, and there is a lot, like neither Gregory nor Andy doesn't take Parkinson's medications.
Mhm.
And it doesn't sound like Gregory is at this moment either. And
Mhm.
the medications have their own side effects, which can
Mhm.
include agitation, sleepiness, anger. There's a lot of things that the medications can cause. So I would also say, because I don't know who else is gonna watch this or listen to this, that most people who have Parkinson's are on medications. And if you're on medications and you're feeling those types of extreme emotions and symptoms that are negative, definitely talk about changing your medication.
Mhm. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys all so much. Really appreciate again your time today. Kelly, I'll leave it over to you just to wrap up our session today. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Corrina, Ahava, Gregory, Michelle, and Andy for a great webinar today. With that, I would like to conclude the webinar and thank you everyone for joining. Hope you have a
Thank
good night.
All right. Bye.
Bye now.